Well, everybody, welcome once again to Kindway Academy. Today we have Diana Kabovic, who will be uh, doing a presentation on healthy relationships. But before we begin, would you guys join me in an attitude of prayer? Merciful God, we thank you for the opportunity to share wisdom and experience with those who attend. The work that Kindway does is so important, and we call on you, Father, because we absolutely could not do it without your grace. We thank you for your mercy that has gotten us this far, and we thank you for the grace that is going to carry us on into that which you would have us do. We trust, Lord, that everyone is able to log in as they wish. Um, but as we know, we're recording so they can catch it later if they don't. We thank you, Lord God, for everyone being able to get with us today. We can't meet in person, but you have made a way for us to be able to gather. We love you. We honor you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Well, everyone, like I said, once again, welcome. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our executive director, Christine Money, so she can introduce our guests.
Okay, thank you, Juan. Um, we have a really important presentation tonight. Um, Diana and I had a conversation several months ago and talking about helping people identify whether or not relationships are healthy. We have all seen, if you have volunteered and worked with our men and women, you have seen people make, some pretty um, stressful choices in it, whether it's immediately jumping into a very serious relationship or it's selecting an unhealthy relationship. Um, last month, we talked, Paul did a presentation on relapse. So this probably the two biggest factors on people failing would be relapse into drugs and then or making an unhealthy relationship choice. So we're fortunate that we have Diana tonight. She is a licensed social worker. She worked at the Department of Aging. She can talk about some of her other things. But Diana's been a navigator with us. She she worships at Maynard United Methodist, and she and Hope Roberts lead the Welcome Home Project program for our women and welcome them back. She also was the instrumental, she and Hope, in setting up the Maynard House where our women live. So she has been very, very engaged with us and played a very important role. And I want to thank you, Diana, for everything you've done for us because there's countless things that you have done. So tonight, I think it's a critical presentation because we may be, as we're working with our men and women, I think if we're equipped to identify um, when there are warning signs and things look like they might be going in a bad direction, that we can talk about how we might intervene. So I'm going to turn it over to Diana.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Mhm.
So what is a healthy relationship? It's like this $10,000 question, right? A healthy relationship has been defined by a number of professionals as, first of all, one that you want to be in, not one that you're forced to be in, one that's good for you, which of course is a subjective thing. It's one that affirms you as a person. It supports you, it encourages you, and it's a place where you can be your authentic self. Your views and your needs are considered. There is trust, honesty, respect, and in intimate relationships, a shared vision, not one person's vision, but a vision that the two of you come together. So where do we learn to have relationships? We learn them from the people who raise us, from our upbringing. And so the question, as we grew up as children in these situations with families or friends, is, did you feel secure? Did you feel love? And really, most importantly, was there a healthy, safe, loving adult that you were connected to? And then, almost as important, were you permitted to be a child? In many dysfunctional families and in situations, we find that older children are caring for younger children and often are acting as the parents, protecting other people in the family, protecting other children. And as a result of these developmental issues, it tremendously affects our ability to engage with other people. It impacts our ability to mature into adulthood. It's estimated that about 70% of us have had some kind of trauma before the age of 5. And so let's look after the age of 5, and we can expect that a number of people in our lives have experienced some kind of trauma. That trauma dramatically impacts your ability to have relationships because it hampers your ability to form your own identity. And you start asking questions like, am I good enough? Am I accepted into this family? What's expected of me? And you begin to question and sometimes really suppress your own emotions. So you're really not sure how to express yourself because you perhaps aren't permitted to do so. And so you kind of start stuffing these things. People affected by childhood trauma often don't remember much of their childhood because it's a way of our brains and our minds to protect ourselves. We simply just forget that stuff and we go on. It also can lead us to be attracted to destructive relationships as we get older and become adults, because that's what we knew and that's what we saw. It's familiar. And so you are actually attracted to, the abusive parent, the abusive partner, the people who put you down, because that was your life experience as a young person. It can also lead to people avoiding relationships, not wanting closeness, not feeling good enough to have relationships with other people, and believing that relationships are just too complicated. So it can kind of go both ways. So learning how to have healthy relationships becomes something that we have to work on. So tips for healthy relationships also mean that there have to be understanding and tips for creating boundaries, because creating boundaries is how we are able to not get sucked into unhealthy relationships and to perhaps change some of those patterns. You have your family, you can't divorce your family, right? You can divorce a spouse, you can leave a relationship. But even in family situations, I think it's important for people to understand that you sometimes have to set boundaries with family. If family are always expecting you to be a certain way, to be the giver, or to be the person that people run to for either money or resources, there's a point in time where you have to be the person who says, I'm not going to be a person anymore, and I'm going to set boundaries because I need to protect myself. I need to protect what I have, and I need to protect myself emotionally. So setting boundaries is critical. And so you need to know what your limits are with all the people in your life. What am I willing to do? What can't I do? What can I tell you that I'm going to do? And how are you going to receive that? And you need to know your own value. A lot of this comes down to the development of your own self-esteem. And if you grow up in a family where perhaps you didn't have a lot of adult reinforcement and love, your self-esteem is often not very strong. And so unhealthy relationships that look good, they look attractive, the person seems to be caring for you, can sometimes suck you in. And the next thing you know, the relationship can really get bad and potentially even physically or emotionally abusive. So you need to listen to your emotions. And I think one of the things I've always said to people that I've worked with is, if your gut tells you that something isn't quite right here, that what the person is saying doesn't really make that much sense, or there's just something about this that doesn't seem okay, you need to pay attention to that. many of us have really good radar when it comes to the how people, what their motivations are to be in our lives. And you also need to be assertive enough to say, I can't do that, and I won't do that, and I'm sorry that I can't be the person you want me to be. You know, I can see you once a week. I can, you know, be there for the holiday for a while. You know, I can't be there if everybody's going to be drinking. You know, I'll see you for breakfast. Setting those kinds of boundaries to protect yourself and to move forward. So I know I unfortunately I missed Paul's webinar last month, but this, you know, the whole issue of sobriety is huge when you talk about relationships. The people that we work with come out of prison, having, I think, done a good bit of work around their drug and alcohol use. But a piece of that is they're in a unique space, right? So their ability to use is really different. But when they come home back into the community, first of all, they have a chance to, you know, be back involved with people that perhaps they were using with. And second of all, the whole, you know, the stress of re-entry is pretty significant. And so I think in some ways it's almost as if people are in early sobriety for some of the people that come home, especially for some of the people that I've known who've only been in for a short period of time. So I think it's really important that we encourage them to remember if you know, if you have an issue with addiction, it's really important that you understand it's important to first have a relationship with yourself. You need to understand yourself, and you need to understand that, you know, even the AA model talks about not being in a relationship for at least a year after you're sober, so that you can begin to develop yourself and your contacts and your relationships with people outside of that kind of system. So you need to be sure that your recovery is stable and taken seriously. And I think that's advice that we can give the people that we work with. You can also learn from past relationship patterns while you were using. You know, what happened, what kind of how did my drug and alcohol use influence the relationships that I had, and especially the poor relationships. What did I lose as a result? And then often people also have the compounding factor of codependency, and it can be a key role in how you form relationships. So understanding all of those factors. And I think that, you know, the Tapestry program and getting it right, all of those have really laid a foundation. But I think sometimes people need to be sure that they're reconnecting with the community when they come home. Do they have a support group? Do they have a sponsor? Are they following a program? So that people don't get lost, because once they get lost, then the risk obviously increases for relapsing. And moving too quickly, even in friendships, can get people enmeshed in unhealthy connections. So I think the focus of what we would say to people is your recovery must be the most important thing here. The first year you're out, you really need to pay attention to surrounding yourself with good people that you know are going to support you, with programming that you know is going to support you, that's going to stop you from reconnecting or being involved in relationships that put you at some risk. So how do you know if your relationship is healthy? First of all, you need to trust the people in your life. And if it's a romantic relationship, you need to be able to trust your partner. You need to treat each other the way you want to be treated, with and accept each other's opinions and interests. And I think often, particularly for women, it's easy for them to get caught up in, this is what he wants. This is, you know, what he wants to do next. This is where he wants to go. This is what, you know, this is who he wants me to be involved with. He doesn't want me to spend time with people. Well, those are all red flags to not good relationships. Your partner must like your friends and encourage you to spend time with them and wants to include them in your life. It's important that you make decisions together. And if it's not a romantic relationship and simply a friendship, it's the same thing. You need to be able to make decisions together about how you're going to do things. You don't feel responsible for protecting someone's reputation or covering for their mistakes. Your relationship is healthy if you recognize that you're not that person's parent, you're that person's partner. You're encouraged to have your own interests, to enjoy different activities, and the person who you're involved with loves you for who you are, not for who they want you to be. And you're not afraid to say what you think, and you're not afraid to disagree, and that this is something that you both support and encourage with each other. And you don't have to be together 24/7. I think that that is also something that we see with friends and families. We all know people who get very connected very quickly. So one of the things that often happens is you lose yourself, right? So it's the kind of key things are to maintain your friendship, to keep your own interest, to spend time alone, to have goals for yourself, to recognize the flags that you're losing yourself. A healthy relationship can stand time apart and individual interest. And if the relationship doesn't support those two things, then it's not going to be a healthy relationship for very long. And the person's going to find themselves sacrificing their own desires, their own goals for the other person. Relationships, I like to tell people relationships are really a test, that things happen in your life and you find out very quickly who's going to be there to support you, what are the limits, how much kind of unconditional love do they have for you. And all of these things that happen over the course of days or weeks or months or years will give you a sense of whether or not that relationship is healthy and whether or not that relationship should continue for your own well-being. So when I started working as a navigator 4 years ago, I remember one of the first couple people that I got to work with really kind of started talking about, being involved in a relationship with somebody who she already knew wasn't a good idea, but it seemed like an interesting opportunity. He was, very giving. He, wanted to get her a car. He wanted to give her the opportunity to move in and, get her out of her family situation, which seemed a little bit more independent to her. And I found myself as like a brand new navigator saying, how much do I talk to her about this? Kind of exactly what is my role? Am I a friend? Am I a mentor? Am I, how confrontive is too harsh of a word, but how forthcoming should I be about what I think about this? And I think I know that many of us have gone through this as a very difficult time in a relationship, because you're trying to build trust with the person, you're trying to support the person. Obviously, you want the person to be independent, you want them to be happy, but when you see them going down the wrong road, I think you have to kind of take a risk and say, I know you think this is something that's going to work, but these are my concerns, and this is what I think maybe you want to pay attention to, or reflect on, or maybe give this some more time before you get so enmeshed with somebody. We all know it's certainly easier to get in a relationship than it is to get out of a relationship. And it can be both emotionally, physically, and financially taxing to get out of a relationship once you become involved with somebody. So I think learning how to do that without losing the trust of the person is really kind of an interesting dance, and it's all about relationship too. I think that for the most part, people know that those of us who have decided to be part of this wonderful venture in helping people return to the community and be a support to them, we know we're doing this because we're, you know, this is a calling. This is a calling. It's a Christ thing, and we're doing this sincerely. And I think that that kind of helped me the few times that I've had to really kind of lay things out from my perspective with somebody, that I felt like I didn't alienate them by being so forthcoming. You know, a lot of people, it's easy just to be nice. You know, you hear people talk about crazy stories and they've got these big ideas, and sometimes you sit back and you think, oh man, this is never going to work. And then, but in the role as a navigator, I think that there is an obligation to figure out a way to present that concern in a loving, caring way, so that that person um, can have that kind of feedback and input that perhaps they never got as a child. So you become that loving, supportive adult that they may have never even known before. That kind of coach. I think the role is so multidimensional. It's really fascinating to me. So I welcome the thoughts of other people and questions, comments.
We have, I was coughing, excuse me. We have one from Paul. He says, would you say it's a good idea to find some type of group in which to get involved when a person first returns to the community? If not recovery, maybe some other type of group, like maybe a Bible study or other groups in the community.
Well, you know, yeah, absolutely. Because the chances are the kind of people you're going to meet in those situations are also people who are people of integrity, right? And you can hope that those are people that you can forge lasting relationships. You know, any kind of church family, even volunteer opportunities will sometimes lead to that. You know, a lot of us have made some of our best friendships through the work that we've done, you know, people in similar situations. But I think it's really important that people recognize that people in similar situations, that we all have our baggage. I recently was working with my godson around his breakup, and he was quite upset and talking about, you know, how he felt broken. And I said to him, you know, we're all broken. We're all broken in different ways. And so it's just, we just need to accept that, examine it, and figure out what we do the next time around, and how we handle things in the future.
Thanks, Diana. For those of you who have joined us late, we're using the chat box to enter questions. If you'd like to ask Diana a question, please do so in chat. Diana, the next one up is from Shirley. She's asking, what are some tips that the trauma is more than someone can manage as a navigator? What are some tips, maybe, or some signs that the trauma is more than we can manage as navigators, I guess is what it's saying.
I think one of the most helpful things that happens when people return from prison in the state is the fact that people are given Medicaid. And as a result of giving Medicaid, not only do they have access to medical care, they also have access to mental health care because they have a payer source. And I think, you know, we live in a society, and some people are just not like not likely to go into counseling. But I think encouraging people to talk to their Medicaid provider to find out what kind of mental health resources they have, so that they can actually look at that trauma in a different kind of way with a professional and move through it. I think she's right. I mean, you can't be all things to all people, and you shouldn't be. And getting involved in someone's historic trauma is a therapist role. You can certainly be there to support the person. You can certainly listen to the person. But I think in many respects, we should be encouraging people to take advantage of that mental health benefit that comes with our Medicaid.
Thank you.
I
Yes.
would like to add one thing to that, and that is that we are in the process of looking at educating both our staff and volunteers regarding trauma. And we have a psychologist that's a trauma expert that's going to be doing the April Kindway Academy. So more to come on that. But
Terrific.
yeah.
Okay. We have one. Can you speak on how to be a good partner or member of a relationship and not just how to choose one? How to not just choose, I suspect, a partner, right? How to be a good partner or member of a relationship and not just choose one.
I think first of all, it's a great question. I think you have to recognize that you're both individuals, and we live in a kind of a fairy tale world where popular, the television shows this enmeshment that happens with couples, and that enmeshment is actually, there's nothing healthy about that. People need to encourage each other to pursue their own interests, to pursue their own goals. They need to talk through issues as they arise. And if they can't do it right away because somebody is too mad or too distant, setting a time to do that. Early in a relationship, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying once a week, we're going to sit down for half an hour and say, especially if people are living together, how are things going? What do you think? What about the chores? What about, the things that we have to share as a result of living together or being in a relationship? But those are all very healthy ways to keep things on track, because sometimes, depending on the person's personal history, these things get stuffed. And then at the end, there's some big fight that stuff from 5 years ago is now spewing out of them. And you're trying to figure out, wow, where did this all come from? So checking in is very healthy. And then, again, looking at couples counseling, if it's not something that the two of you can kind of work out. If the goal is for the relationship to continue, recognizing that that's a viable option.
Thank you. Pastor Harrington says, it sounds as though we volunteers should be fairly self-aware so that we can set healthy boundaries. I think it's a pretty good observation for navigators all the way around, it seems. What advice do you have for navigators dealing with the fact that after so much time of incarceration, oh, am I unmuted? Yes, I am. After dealing with the fact that after so much time of incarceration, our navigatees' desire to be in a relationship is so much stronger than the desire to evaluate if the relationship is healthy?
I think that's a great question, because I think the first piece of that question is, do they really want to be in a relationship, or are they so craving affection and perhaps a sexual relationship? And I think that you need to be able to separate the two. Unfortunately for women, I think this is more common, that and this is, I'll admit right away that this is a gross generalization, and any man who's offended by this, I apologize in advance. But I think for women, once women engage in a sexual relationship with somebody, that relationship becomes pretty serious to them, and they begin to think that this relationship has got a future. And as a result of that, the whole situation gets much more complicated. And so I think it's really important to say, you know, I've been away for a long time. I'm looking forward to having some friendships. You know, I don't want to get tied down in a relationship, but I'm enjoying spending time with you. You know, can we just kind of take this kind of slow and just being upfront with what that is, and perhaps it'll blossom into something that lasts. But you know, not pretending like that. I mean, it's kind of a natural tendency for people to want to have that connection after such a long time.
If we can bottle that up, we'd become rich.
Yes, we would.
Um, how would we coach someone to focus on self-enrichment rather than running to make up lost time?
Who I think that's a really difficult one, because not everybody is really interested in self-enrichment. I think you just need to try to get them to slow down. You know, what is the purpose of getting the car, getting the house, and, you know, having kids or whatever? And just to say, it's okay to just be. One of the more recent people I've gotten to work with has really said that to me a few times, that we've seen each other in the last few weeks. She's really been able to talk about, this is just a time for me. This is a time for me to figure stuff out. And I think we can just say that back to them. You know, let's not be in such a hurry to accomplish all these things. Things will happen if you work for them, and you're obviously motivated for that, but let's just slow down a little bit.
I'd say for me, Diana, after being away for 15 years, you know, I had a desire to get back to my boys who were babies when I left them, and young adults when I came home. And um, I questioned myself before coming home, how much of that time was I going to want to make up? And I had to really check myself about what the motivation was. Was I being motivated by guilt for not being there? Was I being motivated by the fear that the burden I had put on my family was so great all that time that I didn't want them to have to carry that any longer? And but what helped me was setting very clear um, expectations from my family and my friends and my peers, and I had to set boundaries when I came home. So many people reached out and wanted to really get together, and I had to put aside a month or two and say, listen, I'm going to prioritize these people in my life, and get a very clear understanding of what the next 6 months, year, 2 years, 5 years is going to look, and what can I realistically expect from everyone around me. And that really helped me. It really helped minimize the burden that I had to come out and try to really get on my feet a lot more quickly than I probably could have, and maybe would have rushed into some very poor decisions. Um, so that's what helped me. I had a very supportive family, a great team around me of friends and peers who helped me really figure out what the expectations were, and were able to communicate those very clearly. And then that helped me prioritize much better about how I was going to. I couldn't make up the lost time, but it helped me really map out how I was going to move forward after being away so long.
Yeah, I think the planning, that is perfect. The planning and understanding your motivation. Those are the two most important things I heard you just talk about, that are just right on to help with making some good decisions about that.
Well, as a navigator, how would you? What if someone refuses to get counseling? Um, how do we move forward in that relationship? I guess uh, as a mentor to this person.
I think that once you've attempted a couple times to have that conversation, by pointing out to them perhaps what you see as the benefits of it, and maybe trying to understand what their reluctance is, then I would call Chris, or I would call Jan, and I would say, hey, I need to talk to you about this. And I would get some input. from others. And because it might does, you know, like coming from me not be, I might just not be the right person at that right time. And I know that, you know, Chris has such a great relationship with everybody that sometimes I think hearing things from her might be a little more palatable. And I know that, you know, Jan's the same way. So when I run into situations, you know, I'm texting and saying, can we talk about this? It hasn't happened a lot, but I don't hesitate to do it.
Yeah. Sometimes we've pulled together a couple of people and had an intervention and talk with the person, so we find out who's kind of who they respect or they have some sort of relationship with. That's a critical point. Who do they have a relationship? And it could be a couple of navigators, it could be, you know, one of the staff. But certainly feel free to reach out to us if you're struggling with that and you need some help. We'll be happy to work with you and develop a plan.
Yeah, I think that's why it's so important to get people plugged into a larger group, a larger community, so that we can reach out to those in the greater network, to see who has developed that relationship, a more trusting relationship, a deeper connection. I'm I don't know how effective we would be if we did not have the component of being able to establish those relationships prior to release. Being able to meet people inside and
Mhm.
transition with them is probably what is setting us apart, um, uh, with the success rate. And I'm so grateful that we were given the opportunity to do that. Okay, is there anyone else who has a question? Okay, well, if there is nothing else, Diana, do you have any closing remarks, or Mrs. Money, any announcements or anything that you would like to make?
I think for me, just as I said, I think it's important that we take we take the knowledge that we have, we take the love and concern that we bring to this role, and we share it with people honestly, um, in a way that maybe you don't even do with, you know, a lot of friends or family. I think that because of our relationship and because of the you know, the impact Embark has had on people on the inside, the people seem really receptive to hearing this, and we just need to be honest with them about it. You know, there's a right time and a right place to have hard conversations. We need to find that and to share our concerns with them, and then sit beside them and move on, whether they do what we suggest or we wait and something happens and we're there to help them, you know, pick themselves up and move forward.
Mhm.
You know, one thing I noticed inside, Diane, is, and even as people come home, or you hear stories of people coming home, is that dysfunction and those unhealthy relationships are so comfortable for people for so long that they don't know how to function outside of them, and we keep finding ourselves back in what is comfortable, because it's an environment in which we understand our role and how to function. When things become healthy, you know, I sometimes we sabotage those healthy relationships. I was talking to someone the other day of a book I read, a while back, and it said, uh, what is it about the nature of man that when he has a streak of good fortune, he tends to sabotage it? And I've seen that so often, so frequently, when people, um, they don't know how to take something that's good because it's new to them, it's foreign to them. And people coming home sometimes have that. The reality is that every relationship their entire life has been dysfunctional and unhealthy, and they don't know how to function and how to be responsible on their end. Sometimes it's easier to be irresponsible in a bunch of unhealthy relationships, I guess, than it is to be responsible in a group of in a new setting with healthy people around you, you know.
Well, and again, you have to learn that. I mean, relationships are hard. If you haven't had a mentor, if you weren't raised in that kind of family, if you didn't, even if it wasn't family, it could be a neighbor. If you didn't have that loving, caring adult, you're going to be at a loss. And maybe in some ways, what happens is we become that person now. You know, now that they're 30, 40 years old, we become that loving, caring person that says, you know, you need to pay attention to what happens when you hang out with people who don't support you and don't love you in a healthy way.
Sure. Awesome. Sue Tracy makes a comment. I read somewhere that we are responsible to someone, but not for someone.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. You know, it's important that we don't take ownership for people who whom with whom with whom we've been attached to give guidance, and not take ownership of their decisions. You know, that can become very unhealthy for the navigator, to assume too much responsibility for the choices that people make.
Absolutely. That's potential for codependency right there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Good call. Is there anyone else, or anyone that would like to chime in? Raise your hand, and I can unmute you. And Miss Miss Pastor Harrington, how you doing? You have a comment?
I was just thinking along those same lines about how hard it is to determine how much to do for someone
Mhm.
as opposed to letting them do for themselves. You know, we have a brand new, you know, I've got a brand new woman who's just out, and my instinct is to smother her, like, let me do this, let me do this, let me do this. And I have to find myself holding back and just letting it happen, and having, you know, answering her questions and raising some issues maybe, but not doing it all for her, even though I might be able to just knock those things off a list and be done with it. But that's not my job. My role is to come alongside and encourage her, be her cheerleader, and let her cry on my shoulder, but not to do everything, because that's her life. She has to be able to live and function and for the rest of her life outside.
Yeah, I think it's hard because
But
I think it's hard because sometimes, you know, we feel like we have so many resources personally, and you just feel like, you know, this is nothing. We can take care of this, and you have to check yourself. It happens in my household all the time. That conversation.
Thank you, Pastor Carthy. Is there anyone else? Okay. Well then,
I'd like to thank Diana tonight. It was a great presentation. I took a lot of notes. We really, oh, you're getting applause. I think you're getting a standing ovation or sitting ovation. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And you know what? I'm sure you would be fine with this, but if anyone wants to, you know, Diana retired, and she has offered that if anybody needs some consultation, as far as if you find yourself in a situation with someone you're navigating, you can contact me, or we could connect with Diana to kind of talk about strategies, because that's her expertise, and she's willing to share that with us now that she's retired and has, I don't even know if you have more time, but if you happen to have more time, she's a wonderful resource and for all of us. So thank you.
Sure, I'm very happy to do that.
So the next time we meet is March
Chris?
9th. Yes.
Chris, I just sent something, or I thought I did, but I just wanted to say to all of you that Diana Kabovic has been a wealth of knowledge for myself. I've used her with several of our ladies that have returned to Columbus. And I just shared, you know, information with her, and she was able to come up with a solution or to give me some advice. And I just think that she's a wealth of knowledge, and we're just happy to have her as a part of our team. And thanks again, Diana, for all that you do for us.
Oh, thank you. It's definitely a team effort.
Go hurry.
It is, it takes a team. It takes all of us. So March 9th is a session on conflict management. So we'll be talking about resolving conflict. And then, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, the April 13th Kindway Academy will be on trauma, and we'll have a trauma expert doing a training. She is intending to have an in-person training with us, probably a half-day training later, whenever it's a little bit safer to gather, probably maybe for sure by summertime. So she's offered her services. She has designed trauma-informed care programming for incarcerated women, and she has done that in private practice as well. So she's willing to actually, Stan and I have had a Zoom meeting with her, and she's willing to come alongside and guide us on what our role should be in identifying trauma, and then what are the appropriate referrals to make. Because she pointed out quite clearly that we can mess things up for people if we get involved in their trauma. So we want to make sure we're handling that appropriately. So that's Dr. Lisa Dragos. And so we're excited about having her join us then. You'll receive tomorrow, Debbie will send you an evaluation, a survey, and email you. And we really ask for your feedback. It's very important to us. So we'll take care of that tomorrow. And thank you again for coming tonight.
Well, all right, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you, Diana. Our best to you guys. If you guys would like to end by unmuting and saying hi to everyone on the screen, that'd be fine. You can do so now. It's good to see all of you here. Those of you that would like to punch out, you may.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. It's
Hey,
good to
Kathy.
see
Good to
y'all.
see everyone.
Hey, Joe.
Good evening. Nice to see
Tom,
you.
good to see you.
Hey, Nancy.
Hi, everyone.
Good night,
Tom,
everyone.
Wednesday.
Good night. Stay
Take
warm.
care.
Good night.
Hey, Shirley.
Good night.
Good night.
Goofing off, Tom.
Shirley.
Hi.
Joe. Hey, Mary.
See everybody.
Tell Steph I said hi.
It's good to see everyone. Miss you all.
Thank you.
Night. Bye.
God
Okay,
bless.
we're
Bye.
together here.
Good job, Juan.
Okay.
Thank you,
What did I do?
Bye.